Hello there everyone, uxwbill here once again. I'd like to do several things throughout the course of this video. The first thing I'd like to do is to apologize to all of you who have been eagerly awaiting a new uxwbill video. After I post this video, there will definitely be a few more to come along. Then, I'd like to show you a score, I'd like to tell you a story, and finally, I'd like to take you along for a bit of a ride. So let's try to do all of those things, and in that order even. Wow, doesn't that just sound ambitious? As you can see here, I've got a big box that claims it contains a Microsoft Sidewinder precision racing wheel. Now, I don't know too much about computer gaming related peripherals, but I do know a bargain when I see one, and I happened to see this thing at an area Goodwill store. And at first I was kind of on the fence about buying it because, well, I didn't strictly need it, and it is a pretty big box, and obviously I have to be mindful of all the things I already have around here that are taking up space and need to be organized. And then I thought about something else. As many of you who have watched this channel for a while will undoubtedly be aware, I am quite an avid player of rigs of rods, and it started to occur to me that perhaps I could use this Microsoft Sidewinder precision racing wheel to better play rigs of rods. You see, I have heard it said by several people, both on and off the rigs of rods forums, as well as people who design and develop cars, trucks, boats, and other vehicles for the game, that it really is best played with a dedicated controller and not a keyboard. So I decided to find out how true that was. But even that wasn't necessarily enough to sway me, because you see, the Goodwill store that had this thing wanted the princely sum of $13 for it. And I decided that perhaps that was a little bit too rich for my blood, but as luck would have it, this item had a blue tag on it, and it was 50% off for anything in the store that had a blue tag on it. Well, $13 I might not have done, but somewhere around $7 I certainly would do. And I did. I dare say I was not alone in that belief, because my dad pointed out to me that when he'd been there last week, this thing was still sitting on the shelf. Why he chose to bring home useless crap instead of this thing, I will never know. But fortunately, the spirits were willing to see to it that I acquired this thing. Perhaps even more amazingly than any of that, however, is the fact that I don't think this thing had ever been used prior to my bringing it home. You see, I have all the books and manuals here. I have the software disk, which I haven't looked at it, but I'll go ahead and do that now for the sake of this video. Yeah, there's not a mark on that thing. I also have, in addition to the user's manual, one of the bundled games that came with it. I have no idea how good this game is because, like most computer games, falling into a prescribed course of action deemed by someone else to be fun is not really my idea of a good time. Maybe I'll take this for a spin sometime. I certainly wouldn't rule it out yet. And of course here is a keyboard quick guide sheet for the game. But let's go ahead and pop open this box, and I'll show you another reason why I feel that this thing was probably purchased and then subsequently never used. And I'll bet that whoever bought it brand new probably paid a lot more than right around the $7 I did. You see, the cardboard packing materials are in here, but so too is the plastic wrap. And what's more than that, everything that was in here was wrapped up in the plastic. Now, it wasn't taped shut or anything along those lines, so I can't say for absolutely certain that it's brand new, but based on the preponderance of evidence here, I think it's a pretty safe bet that whoever bought this thing never got around to using it. And that brings me to the story that I wanted to tell you. Long time ago, my dad bought a personal computer at a garage sale, a pretty heavily loaded Gateway 2000 machine that included its own racing controller, wheel, and pedals. I believe they were from Logitech. Well, at that time, of course, I had no idea what I was going to do with them, so subsequently my mother talked me into turning them in to an electronics recycler and thrift store, the same one that has in the past sold me computer equipment. Naturally, my life is a comedy, and my doing this sealed my fate. I knew that something would come up if I got rid of that racing wheel and pedals from the other computer. I believe, again, that they were a Logitech set, and I just knew that something would happen. Something did happen. I discovered rigs of rods, And I learned shortly thereafter that while you can, in fact, drive the vehicles, boats, trains, planes, cars, whatever in the game through a keyboard, that again, it's highly recommended that you have a proper controller. But by then, of course, it was too late to go and get the thing back. Fortunately, well, time and thrift stores, if you wait long enough, you can find about anything. And that brings me to the ride I'd like to take you on. Let me go ahead and get all this stuff set up and moved around to where it needs to be, and then you can find out whether or not you feel that a controller such as this racing wheel from Microsoft is worthwhile if you intend to play Rigs of Rods or a similar game. My personal opinion is that, at least provisionally speaking, yes, I would definitely recommend getting a controller if you're at all serious about playing a game such as Rigs of Rods. But you can watch me do a little driving here when I turn this monitor on and get everything set up, and you can subsequently draw your own conclusion. But before I go ahead and do any of that, because I figure that there will be at least one person in the viewing audience who fancies him or herself a comedian, I felt that I ought to touch on the presence of the petroleum jelly that the more eagle-eyed amongst you, i.e. the ones who actually read video descriptions and things like that, will probably have noticed and figured that it might be for some nefarious purpose. No? It is most definitely not. I have had to make one minor repair to this thing already. These are the brake and accelerator pedals. To my slight surprise, there's no clutch pedal on this. So I guess that in the racing game, it's presumed that all the cars have an automatic transmission, or maybe there's some other way of shifting via the keyboard. Well, this thing had a bit of a problem. As I played with it, it started to squeak. Now, it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be, because I actually popped the bottom off of it just now, and I actually went ahead and greased up the working, moving components inside it with the petroleum jelly, which may not have been the best possible move, but for right now it seems to have worked. It's greatly attenuated the squeaking noises made by the accelerator, and it has completely eliminated, for the most part, the ones produced by the brake. So enough of that sidebar. Let's go ahead and get started here. In times past, some people have inquired as to what possible use I could have for floppy diskettes in today's modern society. Well, when they're not actually being floppy diskettes and I'm not using them to work on some member of my vintage computer collection, they continue to be useful in that they make a part of a simply magnificent stand for a Microsoft racing wheel input peripheral. I have paired them up here with a scrap piece of countertop to which the wheel is very firmly attached. There's a sort of clip on the bottom of it that you can lock it into place with, as well as a thumb wheel that lets you adjust it to the thickness of the surface to which you're attaching it. And it is definitely a benefit that this piece of scrap countertop is very heavy. In fact, it's sufficiently heavy enough that if you drop it on your foot, even if you happen to be wearing a boot, you're probably going to sing a song or shout an oath of some kind, probably a profane oath. But I digress. Now let's talk about the part that you folks actually came here to see. As you can see, I've got the Rigs of Rods program running on my screen. I've got a car sitting out there. I have the little fellow that helps you walk around the map when you don't have a vehicle or you've wrecked one badly enough that you can't drive it anymore. He's known as the ROR bot, or the Roar bot, I suppose it's intended to be pronounced. And that brings me to setting this up and using it with Rigs of Rods. Now, at least on the surface, this isn't too terribly hard to do, as someone on the internet was kind enough to prepare a file that you can feed into the Rigs of Rods configurator program to tell it that you have this Microsoft Sidewinder racing wheel. Unfortunately, the kind person that prepared that file did not at the same time realize that even if they were not declaring functions used by the wheel, that they still had to include mappings for functions that would still be accessible through the keyboard. And so the mapping file that they uploaded, of course, lets you use the wheel, but if you feed it into the configurator, you will notice that key functionality, such as making the Roarbot character able to run by holding down the Shift key on your keyboard, will no longer work properly. I have gone ahead and fixed this, probably my first meaningful contribution to the Rigs of Rods project, and I will in fact be posting it to their repository if I can at all do so. I will also provide a link to it at some point, provided I don't forget, which might be a pretty big if, in the description area on this video. So if you happen to have this same racing wheel, you can set it up and use it to its full extent without damaging the ability of utilizing the keyboard controls. I have noticed that in rigs of rods, functions that get assigned to the steering wheel are no longer available on the keyboard. For example, the brakes, the accelerator, turn signals, things like that, which are ordinarily all represented through keys on the keyboard, are only accessible through the wheel controls. So don't think that you can reach over to the keyboard as a matter of muscle memory and either turn or hit the brakes or gas or something like that, because it definitely will not work. There are also some other bugs and anomalous behavior that having an input peripheral such as this steering wheel will make evident. And I'll be talking about some of those just as soon as I slap this camera onto a tripod so you can ride along with me and see what's going on. Please accept my apologies in advance for the awkward viewing angle at which the camera is set. Unfortunately, if I set it straight onto the monitor, that would interfere with my ability to actually play the game, and you would no doubt see a hilarious crash, but I'm not ready to show you any hilarious crashes yet. So, forgive me for that. I could have installed a screen recorder, but I simply didn't feel like I could be bothered at the time. Let's go ahead and get in this car. Look at this. This is a wonderful station wagon. I figure we can do something interesting with that. Go ahead and fire it up here. Just give it a few kicks of the throttle. Make sure that it's running just like it ought to. Zoom in on the back there. Now, this particular car is presently equipped with an automatic transmission. I think it's fair to say that most family cruisers such as this station wagon would have been so equipped, and I think its creator would agree, because as you can see, there is an automatic transmission shift quadrant. Well, probably a little more than a quadrant since there's 2 and a 1 low gear on it, but it'll do for the course of this video. That brings to mind a potential bug in the Rigs of Rods transmission code. As you will see, the automatic transmission will not shift until the engine is basically redlined. And this takes a little bit of getting used to. And if you happen to think that, well, you can just floor the gas and hope the transmission will simply go up through the gears, have I ever got news for you? Because Rigs of Rods tries to get the physics model right behind everything that's rolling around or flying around or boating around in it, whatever it's doing, this will cause the car to spin out, especially if it's a rear-wheel drive car, such as this Burnside station wagon that you're looking at right now. One of the things that this wheel very definitely does make a whole lot easier is acceleration, because unlike using the up arrow key on the keyboard to pick up speed and move faster, instead of just being an on or off key, you actually have real throttle control here. And being able to control the throttle instead of having to do the human equivalent of pulse width modulation by hammering the arrow key at a varying rate on the keyboard is simply glorious. Again, you'll notice the anomalous behavior of the automatic transmission. You may have also noticed that my steering is a little bit uneven, that sometimes the car tends to jerk side to side. There's a reason for that. I don't think it's a particular problem with this steering wheel, and I don't know that any computer steering wheel would be better, but if we zoom down and take a look at the steering wheel here, I'm actually turning the wheel right now, and you'll notice that nothing is happening. There is actually a dead spot in this wheel's travel, and I think that's just the nature of the beast. There is also not a one-to-one relationship in operation of this steering wheel controller and controlling the steering in the car. So again, you have to carefully consider that. But as I said previously, having a controller to play this definitely does make it a lot nicer. But if you go into it thinking that there's not going to be a learning curve, well, I think you'll be unpleasantly surprised. And of course, since you can accelerate nice and smoothly without necessarily spinning out, it also means that you can, if you're like the keykeeper or me, when I realize that there is essentially no consequence to be had by doing so, you can drive like a complete wild person. Let's see how fast we can make this thing go if I don't run out of map here. Doing about 95 miles an hour in a station wagon. Isn't that a hit? That might be if there's something on the map that I forgot about. Uh-oh. The brake control is also proportional and gradual, as opposed to simply locking them up if you hit the key on the keyboard. Well, since we're at the other side of the map here, let's just go ahead and see how fast we can make this thing go. Just take it up through the gears. I'll quit yakking and you can watch it drive. At least for a little while. Don't want to ramp any of that stuff. I'll break the suspension right off of this car. Fourth gear. There we go. I'm doing 108 mile an hour in a station wagon. Uh-oh, I killed the engine. That's no good. Spun it around too. Well then. I think something's going to have to be done. That can't possibly be operator error. That's got to be the fault of this car. So let's see if I can get my bearings on the map here and make this station wagon atone for its sins. Oh, I think we can do that. Just have to get on the highway down here. How's that song go? Life is a highway? Get this thing up to speed gradually to avoid spinning it out. It actually is possible to force the automatic transmission to shift one gear down or up from where you presently are, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I said apparently that isn't working. Oh, here we go. I got to do it with the steering wheel control. Duh. Uh-oh, what have we got here? This looks like trouble to me. Oh yeah. Yeah, that was bad news. That's not too bad of a news. At least it was a rental. Let's see what we've done here. This isn't good at all. This is what I so love about this game. You can stage the most elaborate, bizarro stuff and just see what happens when you actually go to do it. You know, crash testing, stuff like that. It's not perfectly realistic. Cars fall through one another and do things like that. But in general, this is the stuff that keeps me playing Rigs of Rods. This is why I just absolutely love this game. And of course, you can stage some really bizarro stuff like police chases. And of course, there is absolutely no consequence from doing so. If you get into too much trouble, you simply reset the game. Let's go ahead and try driving this Ford Bronco here. Sometimes we have to initialize the camera. These were modeled by a fellow on the Rigs of Rods forum known as Stoat Muldoon. He did these in Google SketchUp, and I have to say they are, although they are works in progress and a public beta, they are pretty darn impressive. Now, I was very disappointed when news of Beaming NG or Beam NG, I don't know exactly which one it's called, broke. Not that I have anything against that, or, you know, I wish the team behind Beam NG the best of luck, but I was afraid that it might mean, since some of the talent moved over there and left Rigs of Rods behind, that there wouldn't be any good vehicles left. And I am pleased to say that at least for now that doesn't look to be the case. It seems that the Rigs of Rods community remains pretty vibrant to this day. So let's see, what am I going to do with this crazy thing? Yeah, I started driving it around. You'd think that I'd have some kind of a plan for it, but I guess not. I guess I'm just going to sit here and yak on video. See how bad we can get this thing to lag. I did upgrade in the world of things. Some of you have probably noticed this computer in the background before. Yes, it's a Windows 8 machine. No, I'm not going to get into the how and why of that or my exact feelings on Windows 8. I'm just going to say that Windows 8 is still running on here because, well, with the Start menu added to it, I do find it tolerable at least. And there are a few features that I would, without too much shame, admit that I liked. You know what we can do? We can take this ramp up here and go over the roof. That'd be a lot of fun. Uh-oh! Oh, that'll buff out. I'll get Furhead to work on it. Alright, everybody. Well, I think that's about everything I can think to say for now, so thank you very much for watching this admittedly somewhat rambling, but hopefully not too terribly pointless video, and by all means, feel free to leave a comment if you should happen to have one.